Hey there, Dr. Anna Maria Helt here, herbalist and microbiologist with Osada Natural Health here in Colorado. This is now part 6 of our Rocky Mountain herb walk. So this was a pretty long herb walk that I did in May and then again later in June to look at plants at different points in the growing season, medicinal plants and some mushrooms as well here in the San Juan Range as a way to introduce people to some really great high country medicinal plants, many of which though are actually found elsewhere. So originally the total length was about 2.5 hours of herb walking, and so I've been breaking it down into chewable pieces for you. So this is part 6 where we're really getting more in depth in terms of medicinal uses of plants. It is now later in June, so we're into summer and we're back at 9,000 feet elevation in a riparian zone, but due to drought is actually a pretty dry riparian zone at the moment. So here we go.
I'm showing you violet again. There are a lot more out blooming now than I guess 5 weeks ago, the last time I brought you here. This is Viola canadensis, Canada violet. And we also have Viola adunca, which is a wood violet, a really cute, smaller violet with much more strongly heart-shaped leaves than that. And their use, though, is interchangeable. And by the by, if you happen to have a garden with a little bit of shade, you can transplant these. So instead of harvesting a bunch of them in the wild, maybe just take a few plants home and plant them in the shade, and after a while you'll have your own little domestic crop to harvest. So violet is good for a lot of things. It's soothing and moistening. It's nourishing. The leaves are nourishing. You can use the leaves and the flowers as medicine. Here's another cute one over here. Let me zoom in. Another sweet little Canada violet. So one of the more well-known uses for violet is gastrointestinal stuff. So inflammation and irritation, basically from the mouth to the butt. So you could use this for mouth sores. You can use this for stomach issues, intestinal issues. This would be really lovely in a hemorrhoid salve as well. So a really great cooling, anti-inflammatory, and healing vulnerary remedy for the gastrointestinal tract. Here are some leaves here, beautiful, beautiful leaves, some heart-shaped leaves. We'll often have both Viola adunca and Viola canadensis right in the same spot here in the San Juan Mountains. Another thing that violet has been used for is for removing growths on the skin, and I have personal experience with this. I had what luckily turned out to be a benign keratosis growing on my skin. And of course, when they cut into it to biopsy it, what happens when we cut into things? They grow. So it started growing like crazy. And I made a salve out of violet leaf to apply to it. And it actually, over multiple months, helped the chunk that was left to go away. And it's never come back since. So it can be a really useful remedy, violet, topically for skin growth. Now keep in mind, this was not a cancerous growth. This was a benign growth, but it did resolve. Violet is also used for heart things, more emotional heart especially. It's a really sweet remedy for sadness and depression. And to me, this has always been one of my favorite plants, one of my favorite flowers. It seems so common, but it's always been a magical plant to me. And while I'm saying it's great for heartache and heartbreak, it's also got a darker association as well with things death related, which, you know, that kind of association with plants I also find fascinating, whether it's violet or even some of the poison plants. So it's a really lovely, sweet little flower that likes shade, or at least, you know, part shade, part sun. Maybe we'll find the blue wood violet growing along the trail a little bit further on. I know I just talked about Canada violet, but here's Viola adunca. Unfortunately, this one's not blooming at the moment, but it's a much smaller violet. It's how I'm distinguishing the two. It's one of the ways you can tell the difference. The leaves are heart-shaped, and they are in Canada violet as well, but as Canada violet grows, the top leaves are no longer as heart-shaped. So this is wood violet. And as I said in the first part of this video series, it's good to look at things when they're not blooming. and learn to identify them when they're not blooming. One other little tidbit I wanted to mention about violets is candied violets. Really a sweet treat, a great thing to use to decorate cupcakes or cakes. Some people just eat them as candy. They're literally coated in sugar and they're stunning to look at. One of the tutors, I don't remember which, apparently was a big fan of candied violets, and she ate so many of them that her teeth started to rot and fall out. So maybe not a medicinal use of this plant, but one other little blurb I wanted to mention about it. Now, over here, I'm just gonna hobble over on my bum hip, and we're gonna look at thimbleberry. And again, this guy's not in bloom right now. Here's some here. Here's some over here. Those big palmate leaves. Here's another one here. This is another common plant along the trails here. I would call this the true toilet paper of the woods. You might have heard mullein called that for Vascum thapsus. I don't recommend using mullein as toilet paper. If you've ever seen those little hairs, you're not going to want those on your bum. These leaves are much more gentle. So this is Rubus parviflorus. Common here in Colorado. I used to see this in Washington before I was even an herbalist, and you know, it was just such a common plant. You see this in parts of the Bay Area as well. And when it is ready to fruit, it will indeed make a berry, thimbleberry, that looks kind of similar to raspberry and blackberry, a different color. I believe it was maybe the herbalist Michael Moore who described their flavor as insipid. He was always a good one for colorful adjectives. They're actually pretty good, unless you're a hardcore sweet tooth. And if it's not sweet enough for you, you can make berry wine out of it, or jam, or jelly, and solve that problem quite easily. So this leaf can be used similarly to red raspberry leaf. It's astringent, so it can be useful for heavy menses and as a uterine tonic, for loose stools, so you can use them more or less interchangeably. I don't know the chemistry as well as this plant to compare it, to be honest, with red raspberry, but just traditionally speaking, a lot of people will use this for the same purpose. So I just talked about thimbleberry because I found a cute little one that wasn't blooming. Here we go. Here is one that is blooming. Big, beautiful white flower. So I just wanted to show you. Here's another one, thimbleberry in bloom. We have a couple of little baby fireweeds here. It's maybe hard to see why they call it fireweed right now. There's actually a few different stories behind why it's called fireweed. Some folks say it's because it crops up right after a fire, and while we did have the 416 fire here a few years ago, this part didn't burn, so that's a no for this guy right here. Others say it's called fireweed because of the beautiful color the leaves will turn later in the season. Right now they're just green, but they'll turn a really lovely kind of burgundy color. And so when you see a big swath of them growing, it's like fire. Other people say it's called fireweed because of the bright pinkish magenta flower spikes that will form here on top when it blooms. I don't know, the leaves look more fiery to me, the flowers are more pinky. Any way you look at it, it's a really lovely plant. It's maybe more nondescript right now, but you learn to spot it. The leaf veins and such are pretty distinctive. You have these alternating leaves going up the stalk. So this is great anti-inflammatory medicine for multiple body systems. People use this one for anxiety. It's funny, it's a plant that I see all the time when I'm out hiking here. It's not one that I've played around with much myself for medicine, and I don't know why. It's you know, other of my friends use it and love it and blend it with other of our local herbs, and I just haven't gotten around to playing around with this one much. You know, we each kind of get grabbed by different plants, right? And obsess about different plants. And while this does catch my eye, for some reason I haven't started grabbing it up to experiment with. But a great anti-inflammatory, whether we're talking about skin issues topically, digestive tract issues, anxiolytic plant, really pretty to see, just a big colony of these blooming. It is a colony plant. Here we're seeing it growing in the shade in the woods in kind of a riparian zone. It does tend to grow in somewhat wetter areas, but you will also see it out in the sun in a meadow. Again, a meadow is a wetter area. So it's not so much partial necessarily to sun or full shade. It's more how damp the area is in which it grows. So fireweed, epilobium.
Thanks for watching part 6. We're going to keep on going with this herb walk, so stay tuned for part 7, 8, and so on that I will be putting up in the next week or two, where you'll get to meet some more great plants at not only 9,000 feet but higher up to 10,500 approximately. So thank you for watching.